you know what time it is? Woo! Get into it! Get into it! Yes! We're back, happy people. Welcome to Storytime with Chris. I don't own the music that you are listening to in the background, which is another ambient piece from Mr. Ambiance. Please show them some love. Please go on YouTube. It only takes 30 seconds to 3 seconds. Literally, 1, 2, 3. A, B, C, it's easy as 1, 2, 3. To subscribe and hit that bell notification so you don't miss a vid. And please show my channel some love. I'm able to go live on YouTube to a point. I'm able to put up shorts and short videos and stuff like that. But in order for me to go fully live on YouTube and have accessibility to post my videos in their fullness, I need at least 1,000 subscribers. So if you ever have time, if you have people who would be interested in hearing a highly animated voice read you magical, wonderful, fantastical stories of adventure and magic and high fantasy and science fiction and mystery, you've come to the right place. All right, y'all. We are going to go ahead and get started. Got my glasses cleaned. I've already had my tea. This is my favorite day of the week. And quite frankly, it has turned out really, really well. Couldn't reach my water. All right. Okay. So let's go ahead and get started. We are on chapter 15 now. We're making good time, y'all. So we're at a point where we only have 5 chapters left until the end of the book. So hope you all are enjoying this. Sit back and relax and let's get into it. All right. Excuse me. Chapter 15. The Black Corkchin. Farewell, my owlets, Ordu said, turning toward the cottage. Unfortunate you couldn't strike a bargain with us. But that, too, is the way things are. Flutter home to your nest and give all our love to little Dolben. Wait, Tarn called and strode after her. Eilonwy, realizing his intent, cried out in protest and caught his arm. Gently, Tarn put her aside. Ordu stopped and looked back at him. There is one thing more, Tarn said in a low voice. He stiffened and took a deep breath. The brooch I wear, the gift of Adion, son of Taliesin. Brooch? Said Ordu, eyeing him curiously. A brooch indeed. Yes, that might be more interesting. Just the thing, perhaps. You should have mentioned it sooner. Tarn lifted his head, and his eyes met Ordu's. For that instant it seemed to him they were quite alone. He raised his hand slowly to his throat and felt the power of the brooch working within him. You've been toying with us, Ordu, he whispered. You saw that I wore Adion's clasp from the moment we came here. You knew it for what it was. Does that matter? Ordu replied. It is still your choice, whether you bargain with it. Yes, we know the brooch well. Menwy, son of Tergwyd. Menwy, son of Tergwyd, first of the bards, fashioned it long ago. You could have slain us and taken the clasp, Tarn murmured. Ordu smiled sadly. Do you not understand, poor chicken? Like knowledge, truth, and love themselves, the clasp must be given willingly or its power is broken, and it is indeed filled with power. This, too, you must understand. For Menwy the bard cast a mighty spell on it and filled it with dreams, wisdom, and vision. With such a clasp, a duckling could win such glory and honor. Who could tell? He might rival all the heroes of Prydain, even Gwydion, Prince of Dawn. Think carefully, duckling, Ordu said. Once given up, it shall not come to you again. Will you exchange it for an evil cauldron you intend only to destroy? As he held the brooch, Tarn recalled with bitter clarity the joys of sight and scent, of dewdrops on a spider web, his rescue of his companions from the rockfall, of Gurgi praising his wisdom, the admiring eyes of Eilonwy and Adion who had trusted the brooch to him. Once more there came to him the pride of strength and knowledge. At his feet the ugly cauldron seemed to mock him. Taran nodded, barely able to speak. "Yes," he said heavily. "This shall be my bargain." Slowly he undid the clasp at his throat. As he dropped the bit of iron into Ordu's outstretched hand, it was as though a light flickered and died in his heart, and he nearly cried out with the anguish of it. "Done, my chicken!" Ordu cried. "The brooch for the auction!" About him the companions stood in silence and dismay. Taran's hands clenched. "The auction is ours," he said, looking Ordu full in the face. "Is this not so? It is ours to do with as we please?" "Why, of course, dear fledgling," Ordu said. "We never break a bargain. It's yours entirely. No question of it." "In your stables," Taran said, "I saw hammers and iron bars. Will you grant us the use of them, or," he added bitterly, "must there be still another price?" "Yes, by all means," replied Ordu. "We'll count that as part of the bargain, for you are a bold chicken, we must admit." Taran led the companions to the stable, and there he paused. "I understand what you were trying to do," he said quietly, taking their hands in turn. "Each of you would have given up what you treasured most for my sake. I'm glad Ordu didn't take your harp, fluter," he added. "I know how unhappy you'd be without your music, even more than I without my brooch. And Gurgi, you should never have tried to sacrifice your food on my account. And Ilanwe, your ring and your bauble are more too useful and beautiful to exchange for an ugly auction." "All of these things," Taran said, "are doubly precious now, and so are you, the best of true comrades." He seized a huge hammer that was leaning against the wall. "Come now, friends, we have a task to finish." Armed with iron bars and sledges, the companions hurried back to the cottage, and while the enchantresses looked on curiously, Taran raised his hammer. With all his strength he brought it down on the auction. The hammer rebounded. The cauldron rang like a deep bell of doom, but remained undented. With a cry of anger, Taran struck again. The bard and Ilanwe added a fury of blows, while Gurgi belabored the cauldron with an iron bar. Despite their efforts, the cauldron showed not the slightest damage. Drenched and exhausted, Taran leaned on his hammer and wiped his streaming face. "You should have told us, my goslings, what you intended," Ordu called. "You can't do that to the auction, you know."
"The cauldron belongs to us," retorted Ilanwe. "Taran has paid more than enough. It's our business if we want to smash it."
"Naturally," replied Ordu, "and you're quite welcome to hammer and kick it from now until the birds start nesting again. But my silly goslings, you'll never destroy the auction that way. Goodness, no, you're going at it all wrong." Gurgi, about to crawl inside the auction and attack it from within, stopped to listen while Ordu continued. "Since the auction is yours," she said, "you're entitled to know how to dispose of it. There's only one way, though very simple and neat it is." "Then tell us," Taran cried, "so that we may put an end to the evil thing." "A living person must climb into it of his own free will," Ordu said. "When he does, the auction will shatter." But she added, "There's only one disagreeable thing about that. The poor duckling who climbs in will never come out alive." With a yelp of terror, Gurgi sprang from the cauldron and scuttled to a safe distance, where he furiously brandished his iron bar and shook his fist at the auction. "Yes," said Ordu with a smile, "that's the way of it. The auction only cost you a brooch, but it will cost a life to destroy it. Not only that, but whoever gives up his life to the auction must give it willingly, knowing full well what he does. And now, my chickens," she went on, "we must really say farewell. Orgok is dreadfully sleepy. You had us up so early, you know. Farewell, farewell." She waved a hand, and with the other enchantresses turned to enter the cottage. "Stop!" Taran shouted. "Tell us, is there no other way?" He ran to the door. Ordu's hand popped out for an instant. "No, none whatever, my chicken, she said, and for the first time there was a hint of pity in her voice. None whatever. The door snapped shut in Taran's face. He pounded in vain. No further reply came from the enchantresses, and even the window suddenly darkened with an impenetrable black fog. When Ordu and her friends say farewell, remarked the bard, they mean it. I doubt we shall see them again, he brightened. And that's the most cheerful bit of news I've had this morning. Taran wearily dropped his hammer to the ground. Surely there must be something else we can do. Though we cannot destroy the Cauldron, we dare not part with it. Hide it, suggests Fluter. Bury it, and I should say as soon as possible. You can be quite certain we won't find anyone eager to jump into the thing and break it for us. Taran shook his head. No, we cannot hide it. Sooner or later, Aurorn will find it, and all our efforts would have been useless. Dalbin would know, he went on. He alone has the wisdom to deal with the Cauldron. Gwydion himself planned to bring the Cauldron to Caer Dalbin. Now that must be our task. Fluter nodded. I suppose that's the only safe thing, but it's a cumbersome beast. I don't see the four of us lugging it along with some of those mountain trails. In front of the silent cottage, the companions led out Luagorn, Melalas, and lashed the Cauldron between the two steeds. Gurgi and Eilonwy guided the heavy-laden horses, while Taran and the bard walked one in front, one behind, to steady the Cauldron. So it's interesting because I'm assuming Cauldron is the Welsh name and title for cauldron. So it's Crochan. Cauldron is how I'm pronouncing it. So if anybody of Welsh descent can correct me, which I know I have one friend who is from Wales, please comment below or message me on proper pronunciation. I would appreciate that. Though eager to be gone from Ordu's cottage, Taran did not dare venture across the marshes of Morva again. Instead, he determined the companions would travel some distance from the edges of the swamp, keeping to solid ground and following a path half-circling the bog until they reached the moors. It's longer, Taran said, but the marshes are too treacherous. Last time Adion's brooch guided me. Now, he added with a sigh, I'm afraid I'd lead us the same fate as the huntsman. That's rather a good idea, cried the bard. Not for us, he added quickly, for the Cauldron. Sink the beastly pot in the quicksand.
No, thank you, answered Eilonwy. By the time we find quicksand, we'd be sinking along with the Cauldron. If you're tired, we can change off and you lead Melalas.
Not at all, grunted Fluter. It's not as heavy as all that. In fact, I find the exercise bracing, quite invigorating. A lamb never fails. At this, a harp string broke, but the bard gave it no heed, busy as he was holding his side of the swaying cauldron. Taran trudged in silence, speaking only to call directions to Eilonwy and Gurgi. They continued with few moments of rest throughout the day. Nevertheless, by sunset, Taran realized they had covered only a little distance and had barely reached the broad moorlands. He was aware, too, of his own fatigue, heavy as the Cauldron itself, a weariness he had never noticed while he wore Adion's brooch. They camped on an open heath, cold and barren, shrouded with mist drifting from the marshes of Morva. There they unroped the Cauldron from the tired horses, and Gurgi brought out food from the wallet. After the meal, Fluter's spirits revived. Although shivering in the chill and dampness, the bard put his harp to his shoulder and attempted to cheer the companions with a merry song. Taran, usually eager to listen to the bard's music, sat apart, gloomily watching the Cauldron. After a time, Eilonwy drew near and put her hand on his shoulder.
I realize it's no consolation to you, she said, but if you look at it one way, you didn't give up a thing to the enchantresses, not really. You did exchange the clasp and everything that went along with it. But don't you see? All the things came from the clasp itself. They weren't inside of you. I think, she added, it would have been much worse giving up a summer day. That's part of you, I mean. I know I shouldn't want to give up a single one of mine, or even a winter day, for the matter of that. So when you come right down to it, Ordu didn't take anything away from you. Why, you're still yourself, and you can't deny that.
Yes, Taran answered. I'm still only an assistant pigkeeper. I should have known that anything else was too good to last.
That may be true, said Eilonwy, but as far as being an assistant pigkeeper is concerned, I think you're a perfectly marvelous one. Believe me, there's no question in my mind you're the best assistant pigkeeper in all Prydain. How many others there are, I'm sure I don't know, but That's besides the point, and I doubt a single one of them would have done what you did.
I could not have done anything otherwise, Taran said. Not if we were to gain the Cauldron. Ordu said they were interested in things as they are, he went on. I believe now they are concerned with things as they must be. Adion knew there was a destiny laid on him, Taran continued, turning to Ilanwe, his voice growing firmer. He did not turn from it, though it cost him his life. Very well, he declared. If there is a destiny laid upon me, I shall face it. I hope only that I may face it as well as Adion did his.
But don't forget, added Ilanwe, no matter what else happens, you won the Cauldron for Gwydion and Dolman and all of us. There's one thing nobody can take away from you. Why, for that alone you have every reason to be proud.
Taran nodded. Yes, this much I have done. He said no more, and Ilanwe quietly and quickly left him there. For long after the others had gone to sleep, Taran sat staring at the corkscrew. He thought carefully over all Ilanwe had told him. His despair lightened a little and pride stirred within him. Soon the Cauldron would be in Gwydion's hands and the long task ended. This much have I done, Taran repeated to himself, and new strength budded in his heart. Nevertheless, as the wind moaned across the heath and the corkscrew loomed before him like an iron shadow, he thought once again of the brooch, and he buried his face in his hands, and he wept. That is where we're going to end for tonight. Thank you all so much. And there's a reason why I love this series of stories and why we're reading it for Storytime is because I think a lot of times, especially in certain movies back in the day, when you have a protagonist, there's always this idealistic version of a protagonist. So to be ideal is something that you wish could happen. Or to be ideal is what you, the individual, perceive as the most beneficial or profitable form of an object or a person. So, I'll give an example. Ideally, most people would want to be well off with wealth and money and good health. Ideally, we would never want poverty. Ideally, there would be no world hunger. Education would be free and abundant to all. Ideally, there would be no war. But the reality of it is all of those things can be achieved, but also the things we don't want also exist. So idealistically, we want good things for the world and ourselves. But this story and that moment showed Taran the reality of the hero's journey, which as you get older, kids, when you get to high school, hopefully your teachers will do a whole discussion on that. If not, I'll probably do a whole analysis piece of what the hero's journey looks like. Because a true hero is not measured, to quote Disney's Hercules, a true hero is not measured by his strength or his feats, but by the strength of his heart. It took a lot for Taran to give away that brooch. It wasn't because of the magic that the brooch held. It's the significance of who gave him the brooch. Adion, as I said, is one of my favorite characters in this series. And he knew that this journey would take his life. And yet he still led proudly and with a smile, knowing what could happen. And it's pushed Taran to mature a little bit. It's pushed him to recognize the facts for what they are. And I think a lot of us can learn from that. There are times where heroes do falter, but when we face problems or adversity head on, unabashed, unafraid, or acknowledging that even though we are facing something we are fearful of, we can still face it. That's what real courage is. Acknowledging that you are scared, but still going ahead and doing it. That's actual courage. Like, I am terrified of this thing, but I'm going to go ahead and deal with it. It's not going to be comfortable. It's not going to be easy, but I'm going to go ahead and deal with it and conquer it. That's what real courage is. And that's what Taran showed today in this chapter. Because as fearful as it was for him to give that brooch away and the reality of destroying the Cauldron and what it means, he still faces his task head on and takes ownership of his responsibility. So that's all I wanted to say. Let that marinate in your mind. Have a great night, y'all. I'll see y'all later. Bye-bye.